You're listening to A Creative Excuse, presented by Hecho a Mano. This episode is Ben Muñoz from Dallas, Texas. He's got a show up at Hecho a Mano through July 21st. This exhibition features 6 8x4 woodblock prints. They are absolutely incredible, in addition to some smaller works on view. Make sure you come out and see it before July 21st. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming out to the last few events we've had. You've made it really, really special, and I look forward to sharing more time with you in the near future. We have openings every last Friday of the month, and next one will be on July 26th with Ian Kuali'i, who you may remember from an earlier podcast episode. That'll be a really fantastic show of cut paper works. As always, thanks so much for listening. I'm kind of glad we didn't talk too much when you first came in. You know, save it up.
Yeah.
Save it up. So cool, man. Thank you so much for being here. We're just jumping right in. So
sounds good. How do you edit this yourself?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
I don't really do too much editing.
Okay.
I mean, only if there's like a long pause or like, I don't know, you said something racist. Oh, wait, that comment back there, I don't know.
The other day I was doing a podcast, I said a bunch of Titanic jokes, and then later I was like, I shouldn't have done that.
Titanic jokes?
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, it just, people died, you know, and I know no one's around to really feel my grandfather, like, it's so far removed, but
yeah,
my friend, we were at SGC. Do you know what SGC is? The Southern Graphics Council. It's like a printmaking, like a national printmaking convention thing. And they bus people around, and it's super disorganized. They forgot a bunch of people. I mean, they forgot like 100 kids, like just students and stuff at this college. So I went to go pick up like one of my friends, not knowing there's like 100 of them there. So my car got filled up with like people I didn't know, so I could like get them out of there. But I told them that it felt like a Titanic situation, and then we started just, wasn't that funny? I was like, you know what? And later on I was thinking about it, I was like, that probably wasn't funny.
I don't know if anybody would get offended about a Titanic joke at this point. I mean, like, yeah. That's funny. Cool. So you just drove in from Dallas. You stopped at the Grand Canyon.
I did.
And it sounded like that was pretty special.
It was incredible. I mean, I went once when I was like 9, but you don't realize, and you can't like comprehend. I remember my father taking us, and I had no idea what it was, and us bothering him, being like annoying kids, like, are we there? Like, da da da. And I was like, where are we even going? And he was like, the Grand Canyon. And I was like, what is that? And to explain it to a child, he said, it's like a big hole in the ground. And I was like, that sounds so dumb. Like, I don't want to be here. And so I think I kind of had that attitude the whole way. And even as a kid, you could show a kid the most incredible thing, and wow, and 2 seconds later, they're playing with dirt, you know? So to see it now, it was really incredible. It's like a spiritual experience to kind of go, and especially as an artist, to see all the different values, and it's almost hard to comprehend like with your naked eye, because there's so much depth there that I think is really only viewable there. I can't think of another instance in life that I've ever seen that much depth that close together. So it's kind of hard for my eye to comprehend. Like, I'll look and I'll think that I see the bottom, and then I'll realize that that's just dense trees, and beneath that is more, and then beneath that is more. And this cliff kind of blends into this one because I'm so high up, but in reality that's probably like a 30 to 50 foot drop. And it's crazy, especially as an artist, to see that, and then just try to imagine it. And then it's a very humbling experience, because artists are really creators, and then to see something that was created over millions of years like that, and you kind of feel like a child, totally creating in this place that was created just way before you. It'll be here way after you, and it kind of humbles you to this place of like, nothing I do is really that important.
In a good way, right?
A great way. In the best way,
right?
I think in a way that helps you remember not to take yourself too seriously, and not to. And I don't think I've ever done that. I don't think I've ever walked in somewhere and been like, everyone revere me, but this just further enforces the idea of like, this isn't that important.
Well, that's just a gross level of it, right? Like, I think that tendency goes deep, right? And it can be really subtle. and it's not always apparent, and maybe nobody even knows except you.
Yeah.
You know, the level to which we, you know, are constantly serving our own egos. You know, so I think it's something that we can constantly like go deeper with. You know,
Yes.
and just like I don't think we can get to the end of humility.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's one that I think for me, like I think I'll always be going deeper into and like, you know, learning from.
Yeah.
You know? And partly because I keep screwing up, you know, partly because like I keep going back. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I can learn from that one.
Yeah. Humility is a funny thing, man, because I think that especially like in today's society, we have such a warped view of what it actually is. And it's become like this self-deprecating type of like, and it's like, that's not what humility is. I have friends that are real like, oh, my work. Like every time I compliment their work, they're like, oh, well, it's not that good. Or they start complimenting my work. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you don't need to do that. If I give you a compliment, you don't have to return it. I didn't give you a compliment, so you return it. And I think a lot of people think that humility is thinking less of themselves. Yeah. And I kind of came to this realization that humility is not thinking less of myself. It's not thinking of myself at all. You know, it's very like, even on the way here, I was, you know, kind of just thinking about everything that you've done. And I don't think like of myself of like, oh, I'm probably gonna like da-da-da-da-da. Like I'm thinking of everything you've done. I'm like, oh, Frank's really bought a lot of stuff from us, and he's really helped us out so much. He's been so supportive of my career. This is a great opportunity. It was very nice of him to pay for us to stay here for the night, and you know, so I mean, keeping it, not thinking of myself at all. It's very easy to be humble when you remember all of the things that everyone has done for you.
Yeah, for sure. I was there's this guy that came in yesterday, and he was selling these little stone carvings that are on the table here. There's little 4 stone carvings, and you know, he was one of the most grateful people that I've talked to in recent memory, and he was essentially homeless, living out of his van. And he's like, man, thank you. I can get a hotel tonight. Oh, wow. You know? Yeah. And he was just so happy to be able to be making work. You know, he was an alcoholic. He got sober, and he was just loving life, you know, and had very, very little. And it was such a beautiful experience, and just continue. I need to be reminded of that often, you know, because it's like you said, we have warped views of what humility means, but we also have warped views about what we need, you know, to be happy. Yes. And boy, that we can get used to convenience really fast. You know, man, why can't I get this or that, or drive faster, or whatever? You know, it's a trip. Yeah, it's a trip.
There's a lot of things that I think about. Like that, I did a piece the other day about wealth income inequality, and like the byproducts of like, you know, a large wealth gap, and how that affects things in negative and positive ways, and things like that. And one of the things that I was looking at was like, I read up a lot on stuff. If I'm fascinated with something like wealth income inequality or the immigration court process or something like that, I spend about a week, maybe 2 weeks researching it and reading up different theories and stuff like that. So I have a good understanding of it, and then my work has some substance behind it. So I was looking that up, and something that I'd come across was social utility, which I'd never really dove into, and that blew my mind. And
what do you mean by that when you say social utility?
Kind of like, there's a few, like it kind of encompasses a lot, but my 2 favorite things about it were like what is best for a thing, basically what it means for society as a whole, like who would value something more, what's the best social use for something. Is us like, is that like if you have 2 houses, one of them's in Aspen and you're never there, that house,
we are in Santa Fe, so we have a lot of houses that people don't use.
So like that house basically means nothing to you. It means something to you. You know, you like it, but it, in comparison to what it would mean to a homeless family of 5, it means nothing to you. So that the idea of what that is, and then also the idea of like how we waste money on stuff. I'm trying to look at exactly what I'd it was the environmental thing. There's like a bunch of like flowers and grass and stuff, and there's an idea, a theory that the greater wealth income inequality, the greater wage gap that we have, the better it is for the environment. Because if people don't have money, extra money, they don't spend it on things that would be wasteful. So if you only have enough to cover food, housing, clothing, transportation, and I don't know. There was a fifth one. I don't remember what the fifth one was. But if you only have enough, no, it's 4. Yeah, it was those 4. So if you only have what you need for those things, you're not spending extra money on, say, a soda. And if you go out and you buy a soda, now you've bought a plastic bottle. This plastic bottle can't be recycled, and then somebody made that Coke over there. They drove it across the country in this 18-wheeler, produced a bunch of like, there's this carbon footprint now, and then you buy it for 2 seconds, and then it goes straight in the trash. And other things like that. People buy things that are wasteful, and if people don't have the money to do that, that's not happening. And it's in as a result of that, it's better for the environment. There's no like hard facts, but it was a theory that I read that was very fascinating to me, because when I think of a large wage gap, I only think of negative things. So to read something that was like, it'd be a good thing if everybody only had enough money for medicine, food, clothing, because then we wouldn't be consuming all of this, plastic bags and like. I was super excited that you guys have a plastic ban. I knew nothing about. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I think in Santa Fe there's no plastic bags, but if I go. So I live 30 minutes out of town. So if I stop at the grocery store by my house before I go home, I can get plastic bags.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's like I don't have to go too far to get myself a plastic bag.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Santa Fe does have stuff like that. Yeah, that's really trippy to think about. I mean, and I think it's really important to broaden even if we're not like going to argue for income inequality.
Yeah, no.
But like to just understand like the full ramifications of things are so much more complicated than like the sound bites that we typically go to, or what political parties usually go to. There's so much gray area. So that's a cool way to start. So did you grow up in Dallas?
No, I grew up in Corpus Christi.
That's right, you grew up in Corpus.
Yeah.
How long did you live there?
Oh man, what seems like forever. I was there until 2012. I was born in '93, so I was there until 2012, and then I moved to Dallas for the first time. I was hanging out there. I was going to school. Met my wife, and then I moved back to Corpus, and my wife stayed there. I think we dated long distance for like a year, maybe 2 years, and then she moved to Corpus. We lived there for 2 years, and then we both moved back to Dallas in 2016, I think it was, and we've been there since.
Do you have siblings?
I have an older brother, a little brother, and a little sister. And my older brother and little sister live in Dallas with me. My younger brother is in Corpus, but he's moving to Dallas, I think next month.
Like, as in you all live in the same house?
No.
Okay.
No. What's funny is my older brother lives in the same apartment complex as me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he was looking for a new apartment. And he was like, everything in Dallas was so expensive. And I was like, where I live is fine. And I think a week later he was moving in. And I was like, what are you doing here? And he was like, I got an apartment. And
that's funny.
So he didn't even tell me. He just showed up. And now he's asking me to babysit his kid all the time. Because he's like, right there. I was like, I see your plan. I see your plan.
Right. Were your parents creative? Were they artists?
Man, my father's a creative person.
Yeah.
But because of I think where he was, I think being who he was culturally, with his education and things like that, he was never really able to pursue those things.
Sure.
He was a carpenter, so he worked with wood. I think he could have been an artist, but he never had the time to pursue that. He got married young, and then he had 4 kids. He has no education. My mom wasn't working at the time. You're talking like, I don't know, 80s, sometime like that. Hispanic people are still very traditional, especially that far south. So she doesn't work. She stays at home and raises kids. So he has to provide for her 4 kids with no education in an economy that's not the greatest. So it's kind of an unrealistic, because they're living in the past basically with that lifestyle. You basically in America, you need 2 incomes to like survive. And he's trying to do it with 1, so he doesn't have time to pursue any of his creative endeavors. But my grandfather was a painter, and he was in Florida. He actually like sold some paintings, and he did some relief work, like carving and stuff. My father now is like semi-retired. Every once in a while he'll paint something. And I think he could have been good, but the time is not there. He just doesn't have the time to study something and really, and he's also doesn't have much interest in it. He's really fascinated with like his grandkids now and stuff like that. But I think, short answer, I think that they're creative people. I just don't, they weren't artists or anything like that. But they were very encouraging of us being creative. And even my little brother And my older brother, he went to school for like technical theater, and he was a production manager at like several playhouses in the South, and he was like what are those people, like a light technician. They program the lights and stuff for like the AT&T Center and different stuff. My little brother, that's my older brother. My little brother is a guitarist. He plays like classical guitar. He's really good. He got like a full ride scholarship. Just finished that. He played Carnegie Hall like 2 nights ago.
Nice.
Actually. Yeah,
wow.
It was on Facebook. It's crazy. And then he's caught a flight to Paris, and the band that he's a part of, it's a guitar orchestra, and they're touring through Europe right now.
Wow.
And then once he gets back, then he's gonna move to Dallas. And
That's
stuff.
amazing.
Yeah,
That's great.
So my family's very creative.
Yeah.
My parents not so much, but I think they would have been creative had they have been dealt a different hand in life.
Sure.
I think that maybe all of their creative endeavors were passed on to a next generation, which is really what a lot of my work is about, like this endless endeavor of working hard. So maybe the next generation can do it. And that's something that everybody, I think Hispanic people and like maybe black people and minorities basically, they're seeing a lot. You see that a lot with like Asian people and Indian people. They come to America, they work really hard, and then their children do something incredible, because it's just not in the hand for them. They're going to have to provide some kind of stability, and then their kids will pursue their dream. It's just not up to them. That's hard for me to like fathom, that you would move somewhere and be like, I'm here to work hard and you'll have something. That's really hard for me to imagine, because I didn't have to do that. I just, the doors were open and I was like, hey, here I am,
Yeah.
And I think that you see that a lot now because it's happening now, because it's just that generation now. Now you're seeing people being given the freedom to be able to be creative and stuff like that. But that's something that everybody went through. I think my wife, you don't really see that through her. She's like Irish. Or something like, she's like black Irish. She tells me exactly what she is, and it like flows right through my ears, because I'm just like, I've never heard of that, and I think you're making it up. But the point is that she had people come over here a long time ago, right? Like you had people come over here a long time ago, and someone somewhere along that line made that sacrifice, so that you guys could do. It's the same thing. It's just you don't see that as much because your family made that sacrifice a long time ago, whereas mine, this is like a recent sacrifice for them and stuff.
And I mean, you can even see it. I mean, it's not as extreme, looking at my parents or whatever, but I was essentially raised by my mother, and she worked really hard, teaching to make sure that I could go to good schools and like, live in the place that we lived. And, so, I mean, of course, it's a totally different thing than coming to this country with nothing. But just I think sacrifice is the main sort of like what's that sort of I don't know, golden nugget. That's that can really help our next generations or just the people around us. So when did you first start kind of getting attracted to making art?
I think I've kind of always, I think everyone likes to draw, even like children. I have a 2-year-old and she draws already. So I think everyone.
But at some point, a lot of us stop.
That's true. And I think I stopped. I stopped and then I started up again in high school, but not seriously. I never took any art classes in high school. I just was at the time I was just a really bad student, and I didn't care to learn much. So I would kind of just draw stuff, nothing serious. I wasn't trying to like hone a talent or, really knock out some skills, refined skills or anything. It wasn't until I went to college and the idea of like, what are you going to major in? And I thought like, well, the only thing I'm really interested in is, I guess, drawing. So I'll take studio art will be my major. So I went for that. That's actually not true now that I think about it. My original major was history. I really like history. I love history. I'm super into it. But I started looking at that and the jobs that you could get with it, and I was like, this is just as likely as me being a full-time artist.
And then you looked at the jobs you could get being an artist, and you were like,
Yeah, I was like, you know what? I love being an artist, man. It's like my favorite thing. Like I could probably, if I had like, a PhD in a specific area like war history or something, I'd probably be making much more money if assuming those jobs are so like rare and far between.
They're hard to get.
But nobody believes that it's not going to be them getting something. Right. So in my mind, I got that job, and I'm on a tenor track somewhere. But this is so much fun, man. I get to hang out with people like you and talk to other creative people, and how different my life would look. I was almost like just a welder. I went to craft training school, And I got like an NCCR card, a TWIC card, and everything. And I was like working in the oil field. And I was just like, I hate this. This sucks. It's great money, but it's just the worst thing. It's like soul crushing. And I was like, I would rather make like 4 times less than this and be happy, like making art, because I can't do this. I also want my kids to grow up watching me pursue a dream and watching me accomplish something, because that does something to you.
Yeah.
I have friends that believe that so much is impossible, and I think it's just because their parents adopted that mentality of life is unfair and da-da-da, and that affects the future generations of your family. So I want my kids to grow up seeing me like, oh, I'm passionate about this and I'm going to make it happen, because ultimately this is up to me. And if I work hard enough, this is going to work.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking a little bit about that this morning. You know, there's, you know, a lot of these kinds of, I don't know, sort of like, you know, that book, The Secret or whatever, but like these woo-woo sort of things where it's like, oh, if you believe it, it's going to happen. Well, I mean, it's not going to happen unless you believe it, but it's not guaranteed to succeed.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, I look at it a little bit like surfing, right? Like, you got to get on the board. You have to get out in the ocean, and you're never going to surf unless you do that.
Yeah.
But you're not guaranteed to get the wave.
Yeah.
Right. And you know, waves come and waves go.
Yeah.
So I think so much about, you know, whatever success means to you is about hitting it at the right time. And just like all the sort of factors that sort of coalesce at any given moment. And those things, we don't know when that's going to happen.
Yes.
And it's like, there are people out there that do amazing work and never find success.
That's so sad.
You know?
Yeah.
And so much of it is about, you know, you could call it luck or fate or karma or whatever, but so much of it is about that sort of X factor that we don't have any control over.
Yeah.
You know, and but I think it's not going to happen. Unless you try.
Yeah. Right? I think that what I like about that analogy is the idea of timing. I grew up in Corpus, so like we would surf in the summers and stuff. And what's interesting about that is that there's basically only one time where there's guaranteed waves, and that's hurricane season. And that's a season that, you know, it's going to be there. And I think of that is where I'm at in my life right now. Sometimes I get around like other artists that are just not as aggressive as me, or like, you know, just going, I'm like, dude, you got to get on this right now, like right now, because it's hurricane season. This is right now. We're talented, we're young, we're in our 20s, we're the future. If you wait and you just don't do this and you wait till your 40s, the probability of this happening dramatically decreases. I mean, this is hurricane season. You know, you have to do it now. These are the strongest years of your life. You won't be able to crank out work like you can right now. You won't have the time. You might have kids. You might be stuck in all kinds of. This is it. This is the best problem. Like, I mean, you can still.
Can I excerpt that part of the podcast and just like paste it to the top of my website? Like, I mean, that's so key. And I think, I mean, I certainly didn't think that way in my 20s. And I think that that's something that it's so true, because I look back on that and it's not like with regret or anything, but it's like, oh, wow, I would have done things a little differently now, but knowing what I know now. Yes. You know? So man, kudos. That's really awesome.
Yeah, getting people to believe that is so hard, because if they don't see it, they don't see it. And I'm 25 right now. I wish I would have started earlier. Yeah. Because I have friends, and I know of people too. I follow people on Instagram that started before I did. There's this one girl in particular that I know. She just turned 30 this year, and she had her first solo show at a really major museum in like New York City. And I was like, man, you took the 7 years that it takes to get there in your 20s, and you got there when you were 30. There's so many people who don't get there until their late 40s or something like that. But it's because, you know, their 7 years started at 30 something. That's part of this love-hate relationship that I have with like getting an MFA in grad school, is that you then give this university the strongest years of your life. Yeah. And you get out and it's like, okay, now I'm going to go for it. And you're 38, you know, at that point, you're probably just going to look for like a...
And they don't teach you how to do that.
No. You would be shocked the amount of artists that I run into that are full-time artists or are about to pursue it. They don't know how to do their taxes. They can't write letters of authenticity. They don't know anything. Like, they're not business people. And that's kind of unfortunate, but at the same time, it's not. That I know people that are great artists and they're probably not going to make it. And it's not because they're not good artists. It's because they're not businessmen or businesswomen. And unless if you got a lot of money and you can pay somebody probably like you who understands the business side of this, who understands like, you know, this is about art, but at the same time there's bills and, you know, then they're not going to
Yeah, I did a BFA in Houston, and that was one of the things that was so shocking to me, is that it's like you're in this bubble, for however many years you're there, making work in a community, which is beautiful, and I loved my time there, and it was all about making, just make, and then it's like, okay, you graduated, go be an artist, and you're like, what the fuck do I do?
How?
And it's really, in a sense, very naive.
Yes. Because
the art world is a business, for better or for worse. I mean, I certainly have my gripes about it.
Yeah.
But it is, you can't make it work without the financials. And I mean, there's plenty of people that sacrifice that, and they're perfectly happy to do that. But yeah, art school does not teach you how to be an artist in the world, right? It can teach you not teach you, but it's almost like you're in the environment and you get to know your own process better, which is so valuable. But yeah, that was one of the things for me. Is like, how do I actually do this? And I think, and I didn't go the track of trying to make it as an artist. And I wonder if they put more emphasis on the practical aspects of being an artist, whether I might have done that.
Yeah, I feel like people graduate and they're just kind of aimless. I saw a statistic the other day, I'm not sure how accurate it is, it was from like 2017 or 2016, but it had said that only 11% of the graduating fine art in like the country end up being full-time artists.
Yeah.
And I don't even think that was projecting like longevity. I think it was just like a snapshot. I don't think it was like will sustain for the rest of their life this career.
Yeah.
It was like 11%. Which is crazy. And I think part of it is like what you're saying, that there's just there's no business courses. There's no marketing. Marketing is so important, like self-publicizing and getting a relationship and then developing that relationship, and then growing with people and it's crazy. I have a friend who's a fantastic printmaker up in Washington, and we were talking the other day, and his career is starting to kind of get some traction. And he was talking to me that he was telling me a museum contacted him and wanted to buy some of his work, and he didn't know what to say to them or how to basically have a professional conversation, and he just never sold them work. Wow. Never talked to them again.
Wow.
And I was like, that's insane to me.
Yeah.
Like, why would you not? And he said that he asked his professor, like, how do I go about this? What do I do? How do I create an invoice? What's a bill of sale? Like, I don't understand. Professor knew nothing because he had never sold anything to a museum. And that's a really big problem, because now you have, to your point of they should teach this in college, you have so many professors who don't even know this. So how could they went to school and then immediately into teaching. They got their MFA, adjuncted, got the next position, and that's all they've been doing. They have no idea what the art world is like. And the problem with like the academic art world is that they have basically their own world that they exist in, and that doesn't work. I've been to, I mean, it's beautiful in a way. I'm not talking bad about like the academic art world. It's great.
It's a path. It is a path.
It's almost more true to what art is, I think, because I can go to a show at like, UTD in Dallas or something. Beautiful work on the wall. I mean, it looks great. And a beautiful gallery. It's state funded, and it's beautiful, beautiful. None of the work sold. That doesn't matter. Yeah. Because it was a faculty show. They're not trying to keep lights on or anything like that. And you know what? Everyone's going to high five each other, and they're going to be like, beautiful body of work, and that guy's going to get another show. Yeah. If I had a show in Dallas at a gallery in the Design District on Dragon Street or something, and none of my work sold, nobody in the city would ever touch me again, because they're in the business, and I need, if I don't sell, who's going to represent me? Who's going to want to? So I have, if it's not selling, why is it not selling? I'm breaking that down now. Why is it not selling? What can I change about it? What can I do? And in the academic world, they don't think like that. They're like, this is what I've created, and I don't care if it sells or not. I'm looking to create a beautiful body of work. Right. That goes away once you enter like the public art world, because it's business. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you also have to question the gallery too. I mean, that's an important part of the process. But this is a huge topic. I mean, because for me, that's something that I think about all the time, because I
I think of it as like two sides of the same coin, and they're equally as important to me. It's like I can't keep the doors open if I don't sell work.
Yes.
Not going to happen. But if I don't have work in here that I don't care about, that doesn't make me happy, that I don't think is important, and I mean important in a very broad sense, I can't keep the doors open. I will hate it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, it's really balancing those things out. And it's taken me a while to really come to a sense of like contentment, relative contentment with just the nature of economics in the art world. And I've had to sort of find a way to navigate that and land into something which I can sell, and I also am really excited about. Because I think if I wouldn't have had to have worried about money or like, will this sell or not, I'd be doing stuff differently.
Yes. Yeah.
And again, it's not that I'm selling work just because I think it'll sell, but it's just that has influenced how I've, approached what I do. I don't know that I would have necessarily like become as passionate as I am about, say, contemporary craft, without recognizing like it's people relate to it and therefore feel comfortable buying it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a journey, kind of coming to terms with your own sort of understanding about where money and art lands in that.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of the art world, money does play a really terrible role.
Yeah, it does.
I was at an event, I'm not going to say when it was because that might be, I won't say too much about it. I was at an event recently where, I mean, it was supposed to be like a benefit type situation. And so much of the conversation was around, man, you'll be getting a great deal on this piece. These artists that are going to come up and like become really valuable, and these are investment quality works, and just so much of it was around, the importance of money, and it's just I get that like institutions need to do that and like woo the big donors in order to like make their budgets, but boy, it made me nauseous.
Yeah,
It was like, man, you've really lost the track of what's important here.
There's a lot of galleries that in Dallas, especially not a lot in Dallas. I love Dallas. It's a great place, and they support me and like do a lot of great stuff. And there's so many people that are like pro Ben, so like I really love the place. But at the same time, there's
no hurting Dallas.
Yeah, no. There's
Dallas
some
fine.
Yeah, there's some galleries over there, man, that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
Like I have some friends that are artists that are represented by these places, and they tell me what's going on, and I'm like, dude, you're getting screwed over so hard, like on your consignment deals, on the percentages that this gallery is taking, on what they're doing with your sale of prints, like all. But that's the only gallery that'll represent them in town. And I'm like, dude, it'd be better for you to not be represented by them at all than for you to continue getting screwed over.
What kind of percentages have you heard?
Just like unreal stuff. But okay, I can't. It's hard for me to tell you without it being very obvious.
Yeah,
But yeah, man, it's
something that made you shake your head and be like,
things
what?
that I'm like, what? Like even if you're not a business person, if you're just a human being with a basic understanding, you should know that this is not okay.
Right.
But that's not the case. There's a lot of galleries, and that I know you're not like that. Diana, that girl, the woman who came in, she's, I don't know if you looked up who she was. I mean, she's freaking incredible. She's got like a massive space. She's got like 5 or 6 galleries in there. I mean, it's crazy, beautiful spaces right on the ocean. I mean, it's beautiful. There's few places like that on earth. And she is the total opposite of that person, where if she takes an artist on, her whole goal is to empower you and to promote you. It's like, and that's why I loved her so much, because beyond just like giving me shows, she was giving me opportunities to do things that I never would. She gave me the opportunity to curate my first show. It was really like, how can I empower you? How can I? And there's loads of galleries out there that will take on artists. They believe in these artists, and their end goal is, how can we promote your career? Because I believe in your work, I believe in what you're doing, and I want you to be successful. So the end goal is, how do we get you to the MoMA or something? Like, who can I pass you off to at the next level, or how can we grow together? And that's what you want if you're an artist, versus the guy who's like, we're gonna make a lot of money. Right.
And that is what I aspire to is to, like, the only reason I would want a bigger space or more resources is so that I can do more things like that. You know, because like right now my space is probably 450 square feet. And so I'm not really taking on artists for like the sort of quote unquote representation, that sort of traditional way of representing artists, because I don't have the space to show them on a consistent basis. Right? If I'm going to represent somebody, I want to be able to represent them, you know, and actually show their work on a consistent basis. And so, I mean, and, you know, so part of that is financial, right? So, you know, I'm just starting out and that kind of thing. So, but that's what I aspire to. I would love to be in a position where what the things, the decisions that I make, like putting somebody on my walls, actually makes an impact. Not because I want to think of myself as important. Oh, I've got all this power, but like, oh wow, how can I help this person? You know, because there are so many artists that I see out there that I want to help. That I'm like, yes, how can we work together? You know, can we work together? So yeah, I think that point about Diana is that you can be really successful and still be a decent human being.
And she's an absolute, like, I could call her. I'm actually doing this. She puts on this art festival that literally has thousands of people that come on, and it's like I think it's like a 3-day weekend thing. It's a Labor Day weekend, and she gave me like so much space and money to just do whatever. And I was like, cool. So I'm flying in artists from that guy I told you earlier, the guy from Washington. I'm bringing artists from San Antonio and Austin, and my favorite printmakers. And she basically gave me the funding to bring in all of my friends, hang out at this art festival, and then just make print. She rented a steamroller for us. So we're going to be printing like giant blocks. She gave us money for ink, plate oil, the paper to make the prints. She rented the steamroller. Actually, I think she got it donated. She's like really smart with stuff like that. She gave us a place to like display it. I mean, she's literally just empowering artists and just giving the opportunity. And I think that's also why it's so important to know people like her, to know people like you, to develop these relationships. A lot of artists think like, oh, you know, this is like a lonely, like, you know, like a personal kind of like thing I'm pursuing. But if that's what you're doing, it wrong, you know, because it's if you're an artist and you're doing this by yourself, you're not doing something right. Because in order for it to happen, I need you, I need her, you need me, she needs everybody. We all need each other. This is like a just a weird ecosystem of people, and if you remove one thing, the whole thing falls apart because everybody is relying on each other. It's a lot like I don't know, like how Earth works. If you remove bees, all the flowers die. Everything needs, you remove the flowers and the trees, we suffocate. Everything needs somebody else. And as soon as we remove something, or basically what I'm trying to say is that you can't survive being by yourself as an artist. And I know a lot of people are like, I'm making work and I don't know what's happening. And I'm like, well, you're not going to openings. You're not meeting people. You're not. And that's not like, I think a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to like wear myself out. And it's like, it's not that, you know, you be a social friendly human, like just get out there. And if anything, to the point we'd said at the very beginning of this, the idea of, you know, it's not always who's the most talented that makes it, you know, and it's a lot about networking and stuff like that. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because if it was about whoever was the most talented, none of us would be working, because there's somebody who's better at printmaking than me. There's someone who's better at running a gallery than you. There's somebody, and it's not about that. And if that was the hard facts, none of us, 1% of the humans like would be making stuff because they're the greatest. And so it's not necessarily about the greatest. And that's really encouraging, because when I hear that, I'm like, oh, anyone can make it. Like, oh, we can all do this. So,
and yeah, I think, and you know, when you're talking about networking, that word, I mean, I hate it too. But I think what it does is it conjures up a sense of fakeness, and I think that there's this understanding that you have to be somebody you're not in order to make connections and to network. And I think, you know, that's based on a lot of assumptions, you know, about A, the people you're supposed to network with, B, who you think those people are, your assumptions about them, and where you think that's going to get you, you know. And I think for me, where I've come to is, I hate that. I hate it too. I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to. I'm going to show up to, you know, events and just be myself. Right? And if that means that, like, Some people think I'm a weirdo. Fucking great.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm awkward with certain people, they're probably not the right people I need to be talking to.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
right people I need to be talking to, I'm going to have a great connection
Yes.
with them.
Yeah.
And we're going to be able to work together. Those are the people I need to find and network.
Yeah.
And again, you're not going to find them unless you show up.
Yes.
Right? You're not
Yeah.
going to surf unless you get out on the ocean.
Yeah. There's so many things that I've done that would not have happened had I have not met this guy who introduced me to this person and done this and that. And the whole thing is so fragile, you know. A lot of my work is about that. It's stacked in a way that looks like it could tumble at any second. And it's really just because life is so fragile. Everything is just, there's so many, like, I'm sure you could look back on specific things that maybe you're like, oh, I wouldn't have met my wife if had this not, or, you know, like, oh, if I just driving through the country like Julie and I are doing right now, where I'll look around and I see people, and we were in Albuquerque the other day, and I was like, look at all these people who live in Albuquerque. And I was like looking around, and I was like, they're here, you know? They live here, they work here.
Yeah, right.
And I saw some kids, and I was like, those kids are growing up so different than the way I grew up. And it was because of a choice that wasn't even theirs. They're just here. But same thing with me, you know? The whole thing is so fragile. Depending on where you're born, you're going to grow up with a specific worldview. You're going to have a specific set of beliefs. And your surroundings are going to shape you and mold you. And that event you decide to go to or not, or that college you decide to go to, it's all so fragile. It's all so... Yeah. It's crazy when you think about it. It's enough to make you go crazy.
It's nuts. I think about sometimes when I run into people or people come in the gallery, and you know, some people will come back, but I think about those people, it's like, this is the only time I will ever have an interaction with this person.
Yeah.
I don't know, that just trips me out.
Yeah.
You know, in my entire life, this may be the only time I ever see this person.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Have you ever heard of the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows?
No.
It's really cool. You should look it up. It's a dictionary that gives... It's a dictionary. It gives words to feelings and thoughts, things that we have, but... I'll read it and I'm like, oh, I felt that. Yeah. And one of them, the one that I can't remember the name, the word.
Is it Sonder?
What is that?
Sonder is the sensation that, or the understanding that everybody else is living just as rich a life.
Yes, as you are. That's it. Like the
Yeah.
idea that like you look at someone and you're like, oh, I'm just a character in their life, the way they are, and they're going to go somewhere, and they're going to continue, and they're seeing life the way I am. Because I've always, every once in a while, I have that brief moment of clarity where I'm like, whoa, but there's no word for that.
Yeah.
And now there is. And there's so many, like, another one is that, like, a brief moment where you contemplate your own mortality and then just go on with your daily normal. And I'm like, oh, man. Because there's a lot of things like that. There's this overwhelming, hopeless feel like, oh, I'm going to die. And then you're like, oh, I'm late. And then you take off.
Yeah, that's great. So we haven't really gotten much into art making. This is great. I love this episode. So you went to school in Corpus?
Yeah, I went to school like everywhere, man. And then I did some apprenticeships.
Okay.
Those were
How did you
the
find
most
printmaking?
College. I was going to Del Mar, which is this really cool little local community college with a fantastic print studio. I mean, they have a better print studio than some universities, so it was kind of like natural that I fell into that. And I took my first print class there. I had an elective, and my advisor was like, you should take printmaking. And I was like, I don't know what that is. But I took it, and I think I fell in love more with how the instructor taught versus the medium, because I'm a better painter. I don't know if you've ever seen my paintings.
I haven't, no.
I have good paintings, and I don't bring it up to you. I don't bring it up to any galleries that represent me because, because they'd probably be like, we just don't want it. Like, I don't know, for some reason, I think they're really good, but people just don't want my paintings. Also, you're a printmaking place, so it would make no sense for me to show you my paintings. But I'd
love to see them regardless.
I like them. So it would have made more sense for me to be a painter, because I really believed that I was a better painter. Now I am so out of practice, I probably wouldn't be that great. But so that would make more sense. But the teacher wasn't as good a teacher as my printmaking instructor. My printmaking professor was incredible. He's a great human being. We actually talked on the phone the other day. We keep in contact, and we can talk for hours. He's just a fantastic human. He's one of the first people who like kind of put me aside and was like, man, I think out of all the years I've taught, if I've ever had a student that I think could make it full time, I think it's you. And that's really encouraging. And he was very encouraging and very like empowering. And I'm not the greatest student. I'll kind of like half-ass an assignment and then focus for like 20 hours on what I want to do. And he encouraged that. he was one of the first people that was like kind of pulled me aside, and not to be rude or anything. He was like, I think apprenticeships would be better for you than this traditional school system we have. And I did these apprenticeships, and that's where I got
with
the education.
Makers?
Yeah, well, and also a painter. I did this. I had several sessions. I wouldn't say this was like a full blown apprenticeship, but I had a guy who really invested in me a lot and critiqued my work constantly. He handles all the grad students out at A&M Corpus Christi. His name is Joe Pena. He's an incredible artist. He ran a gallery in New York for a long time, so he understood the business side of everything. And he was just a great person to be under, because he's like, could critique the work and be like, this is what galleries are looking for. Are you taking these steps? Because if you want to be here, you need X, Y, Z. And just all of that stuff that you're not getting taught in college with this one-on-one thing was much better for me. And so, yeah. But I got into printmaking that way, and that's when I really fell in love with it. And I think it was because I had a really good professor who, he loved printmaking and taught me like just the beauty behind it and the rich history. That was great too, because most of the time if you go to university, you go to these classes and then they're like, we're gonna paint, let's go, here's a still life, let's get painting. And he did something that I've never seen, where the first day of printmaking class we sat down and we didn't do anything. He started a slideshow and he was like, this is printmaking, this is Kathy Colvitz, this is Jose Guadalupe Posada, and like click slideshows, and this is the medium. Understand how expressive and beautiful Kathy Colvitz's work is, but understand that she's not what we would consider a great printmaker. The lines are rough, it's edgy. She's a fantastic printmaker, but what he was saying is like, notice how rough it is, and that's what printmaking is it's so expressive, but at the same time it has so much power. Printmaking has like this raw power that you don't get relief printmaking, at least. And that's the thing too. He's like, this is lithography, this is etching, this is just this history of stuff. And I kind of fell in love with that because I understood the history of this thing that I was doing. It's like, these are Japanese printmakers, these are Chinese printmakers, these are this is where it originated. And I didn't. It was just he was just a fantastic professor.
Isn't it interesting how like certain people can like unlock these things for us? Like, I mean, that you wouldn't maybe have found without this person.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're like, oh, whoa, I can see that within myself. That's so cool.
Yeah. The political stuff in printmaking too is really what got to me. Yeah. Because you're talking 2012, things that really just popped off. A lot of stuff is possible now. Change is happening, and people now feel comfortable saying things that maybe they didn't before. They're comfortable protesting things and saying everything from like the beginning of a Me Too movement to like police brutality finally coming into like the light of stuff, and people learning something that minority communities have known for a long time, which is like, this guy could probably beat the crap out of me and he'd be fine and I wouldn't, and that's just the way life is. And then now being like, hey, this isn't okay, and then you have like minority communities like, oh, this isn't okay. So a lot of that is happening while he's like doing this stuff and talking about like the political messages behind things, and just the role that printmaking has played like in the Mexican Revolution and stuff. And so it's the perfect storm. Talking about timing again, it's like it's the time. You hit it, and it's just like, oh wow, I'm here right now in this moment. This is so great.
Yeah, and then you look at like the sort of art history and how people teach art history. I mean, it's 99% painting and sculpture. Yeah. And a certain kind of sculpture at that. So you think about printmaking and how underrepresented it is. What do you feel like are some of the strengths that printmaking can do that you can't get, like, say, through painting?
Yeah, I think the most obvious one is the access to multiples. If I have a message, I can mass produce it myself, and it's affordable for me. Whereas I suppose you could do the same thing with paintings, but you'd have to take it to a photographer, get a really high-res photo, take it to a printer. It's going to be very expensive. You're going to make a bunch, and then when you hand them out, you're out, and you got to go and do the process over again. You pay for more of these. You're waiting on this thing. You're waiting on a laser jet printer. The printer breaks. Oh, our printer's down. Printmaking is not like that. I can carve something. I can have complete control over it, and then I can hammer out as many as I want. And I think that's a strength that only printmaking has. That's probably why printmaking has a rich history of being like the art of the people. Yeah. Because Posada sold work for 11 cents. It was on newsprint. It's janky. I read this article a few years ago that was talking about how so many museums are having a hard time preserving his work because it's falling apart. Right. Because he didn't make it to last. He was making it for everyday people. And he made it as cheap as possible so that they could afford it.
Right.
And it's not archival, and it's falling apart, and they're keeping it in dark rooms. And it's like, what's the point of preserving this if we can't even take it out to show people? What are we doing? And it's got a rich history of spreading great ideas that maybe mainstream media sources wouldn't.
Yeah.
Maybe he can see problems. Maybe I can see problems. Maybe you can see problems. And it's not getting the attention that it should. Mm-hmm. And I don't need to wait on anyone. I don't need to call anyone. I could just do it myself. And I can just hammer these out. I can give them away for free. Silk screening is big on that too. You can have a political rally somewhere in Dallas or a protest of some sort. There's like a neighborhood that's being gentrified really hard right now in Dallas, in Oak Cliff. And they're doing crazy stuff that's like obviously not even trying to hide. Like, there's a neighborhood that they revitalized where, people from North Dallas come to shop and stuff like that. And they'll only repave those streets. And everyone else, like, that lives in Oak Cliff, their streets are falling apart. And I think those have gotten repaved like 3-4 times. They haven't even touched these. People are, their property values are going too high. They're getting displaced. There's nowhere for them to live. All this stuff. So people are like, protesting that. All the racist statues and like all this stuff. And the cool thing about stuff like silkscreen is there's people, hey, there's going to be a protest on Monday, or we're going to like, maybe not necessarily protest, but just we're going to raise awareness of some stuff. And they'll be like, cool, I'll make you some posters. It doesn't cost anything. I mean, silkscreening is so cheap. And if it's for a one-day event, you can buy cheap cardstock and you can make 300 posters in under an hour. Mm-hmm. And you can take them to this event. Everybody's got like, boom, check it out. We're organized now. We're doing this stuff. And you can, that's what I mean. It's like this spread of knowledge and ideas. And I mean, I can't think of a march or a movement or something that I saw on TV that didn't have silkscreen posters, because so many people can just make them. They could just hammer them out. They take them and they got a big stack. And they're like, here, take one of these. And if you look at any of these marches, they're all holding stuff. They're all holding silkscreen posters, or they're just making things by hand. But it's faster to just doom, and then you have these really nice organized things that have the message of the rally or the march. And you see that now. So printmaking is still extremely relevant. People might not realize it. It's funny because the majority of people don't know what printmaking is.
Totally. No, it's interesting. I mean, and I love the opportunity to help people understand like what they're looking at. When they're like, print, what do you mean by print? Like they printed it on their computer? Like, no, actually, and to talk about the difference between a reproduction and an original print. Like, I think sometimes the idea that something's additionable, that you can make multiples, makes it less special, or that it's a reproduction. But it's not a reproduction. The original is the print, right? You have your block, but it's like, that's not the thing. The thing is the print. Yeah. So that these are actually unique objects. There just happens to be more than one. That's the thing. As I have people a lot of the time too, I get the question like, well, what's the art? Like, which part is the? I'm like, it's the print. Like this is just a thing I used to make the art, but people kind of have. Ooh, can we display the block? I'm like, I mean, you can. Everything's gonna be backwards. Like, I don't. Those blocks, the big ones, are displayed somewhere. That's cool, but. It is funny. When I was standing outside of your in the front on that bench earlier, a woman came by, and she was like, "What's in there?" And I was like, "Oh, like ceramics and jewelry." And I think I said like ceramics and printmaking. And she was like, "That's a good combination." And then she like walked away, and I looked at my wife and I was like, "That lady knew what printmaking was," because it was that rare. It was that odd to me. Yeah. And I was like, what are the chances of that? That a lady walking her dog knew what printmaking was? Because I don't expect it. I expect everybody, what's printmaking? And then I'm like, okay, let me explain this. That was funny. I think about that with Oaxaca, like, because in Oaxaca City there's maybe 40 print shops in a city the size of Albuquerque, so it's like 400,000 people. So there's so much going on. I'm like, why is that? And I think maybe part of that is Oaxaca is one of the most politically active states in Mexico. Like the Zocalo is constantly like occupied, So, and I think that probably has a lot to do with it. Is just political communication and for protests and things, and it's just an art that's prevalent and people have used and continue to use and are now doing it for artwork as well. Yeah, but
my dad goes to Oaxaca all the time. My family's from Oaxaca. Oh, cool. Originally. And my dad goes over there. Maybe my father and my mom, they go almost every other month. My sister's actually leaving later this month to Oaxaca, and Yeah, he tells me stuff like I haven't got to go since I was like 14 probably. I've got little kids now and stuff, so it's kind of hard for me to break away and go over there. And one of my kids is like this big, so she's not getting on a plane and going somewhere. But my dad will tell me stuff like that all the time, and he said that the first time he went over there recently, it was like a few years ago, like when the protests started really getting big. He was like, "Oh, I got a flight tomorrow at like 10 a.m." I'm like, "Okay, we'll wake up at like 4 in the morning." And he was like, "Why?" And like, "Well, you have to wake up before the protesters, or they'll block the airport. You can't leave."
Right.
And he was like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, sure enough, we'll get out there, and then by like 6 a.m., I mean, there's no cars getting through. It's just thick with people. Yeah. That's actually really incredible to me. That organization. I feel like if you get a group that big together, you'd have to have a good number. I was looking at the protests right now in China or Hong Kong.
Oh, Hong Kong.
Yeah. And I'm looking at it, and there's so many people, like millions of people. And I
it's
just
like, what, a quarter of the population or something?
it's nonstop. It's like all the time. And I was looking at that. I was looking at a photo of it, and I was like, there's got to be at least one guy in there who's like, "What are we doing here?" Like,
just showed up to the stand, stood in line. Oh, this is interesting.
Yeah, right. What's going on? So I think about that. The organization of that is so incredible to me, that you get a million people out there chanting the same thing or something. Like, who's leading this? Who's the person who can lead a million people?
I know. That's nuts.
And then it makes me think, like, are all these people on the same page? Because I would just love to meet that guy who just wandered in there and like, what's going on?
Came out for ice cream.
Yeah. You know if that Subway's open? Like, he's trying to get through.
It's awesome. So I always end by asking if you can think of it could be a piece of artwork, it could be an exhibition, could be an artist, or some kind of experience in that realm that it sounds like you already mentioned one, that being this person you interned with or apprenticed with and turning on to printmaking. Can you think of another piece of art or experience like that really altered your trajectory?
Ooh.
Or that like really just changed the way you thought about artwork or art in general?
To change the way I thought about art.
Or moved you in a different direction?
Or moved me in a different direction. That's such a deep question. I'm trying to unpack it in my mind. Man, I think that maybe creating the Endless Endeavor.
Wow.
That has opened a lot of doors. And I know, I'm sure you've seen a lot of it, like a lot of different publications have taken it on, and it's been getting a lot of attention and different like press and stuff like that. And I think that really encouraged me to kind of realize this is a possible thing. A lot of people make art for a really long time, and they don't get that exposure. They don't get that traction and the stuff. And recently, I've been getting a lot of just publicity and articles and things like that because I think of that. Now, some of them aren't even about that, but that's the thing that kind of started it, and that kind of pivoted me in a direction that was like, I'm gonna work at that level of intensity all the time, because while I was making it was extremely hard, and it was like nonstop all the time, every day. And while I was creating that, I realized that wasn't a seasonal thing. That's a work ethic that I should adopt for like ever.
Yeah.
So that through that I gained an understanding that like, okay, this isn't like a specific like train speed that I'm at for a season. This is what my life is going to look like for a very long time, until I get to a place comfortably that I could like kind of back off of. Because I feel like I'm at a point in my career right now where it could really go either way.
Yeah.
I'm at a point where it's like, okay, like this kid's like very promising and he could be a lot of things, or I could just be another person that does another year or two and then just burns out, and then it's like, oh, I remember him, like, or like who, and I feel like that's where I'm at right now. And if I don't keep that momentum up, if I don't keep that work ethic, that I think basically that creating the Endless Endeavor gave me a work ethic that I feel like is gonna kind of sustain me. It was like I feel like it was kind of like if you build a house or something, and you kind of do it, and it's like, okay, this is what the work looks like. It's kind of like going to work like the first week of like you start a new job or something. And you kind of like realize, oh, this is hard work, but then you realize like, okay, this hard work is going to become the normal, and this is just where I'm going to be at.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a measure of work ethic until I did that.
Yeah.
Before that, I was just aimlessly making work and doing a workshop here or there, working when I could. And that after that project, I adopted regular studio hours. I worked at a specific intensity. I started working in days or projects more like it than days. So instead of being like, I create art Monday through Friday, that's nothing. That means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'll start blocks and I'm like, this block's going to be done on Wednesday. And then I'll just do. And it doesn't matter the hours anymore. The project needs to be done by Wednesday. So if that means I work extremely late on Monday, half a day Tuesday, and I don't leave Wednesday until it's done, that's what I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have that type of mentality or work ethic before that project. So I think that really did a lot to help me.
Well, I think the people that will be able to come see the show, I think will be able to look at the work and say, like, yeah, that's a lot of work. Can you give like the quick sort of elevator pitch on the Endless Endeavor for those that can't make it to the show?
The Endless Endeavor is 6 blocks that tell the history of my family from my perspective. So it starts with my grandfather and ends with my daughters. Each of the 6 blocks is 4 feet wide by 8 feet high. And they're basically the story of my family told through imagery and composition. So each thing is stacked to represent the idea that each generation works hard to elevate the following generation. Also, a lot of the times the stacks are chronological, and the prints themselves from 1 to 6 are chronological. So
got it. And so and grandfather was the one that immigrated to the
yes,
US. Okay.
Yeah.
So it starts with his journey.
Yes, his journey from Mexico City to America. This is really funny because both of my parents have families that came to the United States in the same generation from different parts of Mexico.
Uh-huh.
So my grandfather on my mom's side came from Mexico City. The other one came from Oaxaca, and they both showed up on different. One was in Florida, one was in Texas, and then somehow and then they met and connected. It's again one of those like weird situations, a fragile thing. But this is about my mother's grandfather. I was close to him. I didn't really know my father's grandfather. My father's dad. I didn't know him. So my mother's grandfather. My mother's dad, my grandfather, he was an extremely incredible person, very hard worker, and I think I adopted a lot of his work ethic. And so the story starts with him, runs through his children, me and my wife, my children, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah, cool. Anything coming up? Anything you want to plug? Any shows coming up?
I got a show at the Art Center of Corpus Christi. I got a solo show in the Cachera Gallery on, I believe it opens September. It's going to open August 25th, I believe. Okay. If that's wrong, I can get you information. Maybe we can correct it or something.
Cool. I can change it on the intro.
Yeah. Okay. So I have that show. I have this show, obviously, but this will probably be air after this is done.
Actually, I'm going to release it on Tuesday.
Okay, cool.
I thought just like, why not? It's a great opportunity. So,
yeah. So then come see this one. And after that, I'm kind of hanging out for a year, going to create a new body of work, and then I'll start the whole thing over again.
Cool, man. Yeah. Great. Well, thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
All right.